Hello and welcome back. How are you? I'm back again with another video. So I'm creating a course on EC2. I've received messages from a lot of people on LinkedIn, on WhatsApp. They wanted me to teach about EC2 service. And if you don't know, I'm an AWS Certified Solutions Architect. So I'm bringing you a course of EC2 where you will learn everything about EC2. After this video, you don't need to watch any other video on EC2. And this video is going to be a mixture of slides and the hands-on. And if you want to follow along with the hands-on, I want you to have an AWS account. So without wasting any much time, let's get started with learning AWS EC2. On my computer screen, and we're going to talk about Amazon EC2 service, which stands for Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud. And this is one of the most used service, one of the oldest service, the core service of AWS. And if you are working as a cloud or a DevOps engineer, this is the service that you'll be using the most. Even if you're developers, you'll be spinning up servers, and that can be done with this service. So let's get started. Before learning AWS, I want you to set up AWS budget, because you might get charges, and if you don't want to pay more than anything, you can set up budget. If you don't know how to create a budget, I have made a video. You can go check it out somewhere here. I'll create a card and you can set up a budget, because if you don't set up budget, you can get a lot of bill, something like this. I have also made a video where my friend got around 1 lakh of bill for 3 months, which is quite which is quite a lot for students like us. So please set up budget, and then we can go ahead with the hands-on and the learnings. So let's talk about AWS EC2. EC2 is one of the most popular service of AWS, and it is one of the oldest service as well. It stands for Elastic Compute Cloud, and it is infrastructure as a service. So in cloud, there is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. In infrastructure, you need to set up everything from the ground up, which means you will get only servers in EC2. You need to install operating system, you need to install your softwares, everything. So this is infrastructure as a service, and it mainly consists of renting. The EC2 is capable of renting virtual machines. So you can get virtual machines of different OS in EC2. You can store data on virtual drives. So there's a storage known as EBS or Elastic Block Store for EC2. You can distribute load across machines using Elastic Load Balancer, and you can also scale the services. You can do scale in and scale out using auto scaling groups. So knowing EC2 is fundamental to understand how cloud actually works. So using EC2, you have different options. You can choose which operating system do you want. Do you want Linux, do you want Windows, or do you want Mac OS? And you can also choose how much compute power do you want, and how much memory do you want. So how much CPU you want, how much RAM you want. You can choose with EC2 while selecting the servers. And you can also choose which storage option do you want. Do you want network attached storage like EBS or EFS, or do you want hardware attached storage like EC2 Instance store? And this will all make sense when we do hands-on in some time. So next, you can also attach a network card. You can set up firewall rules in security group, which allows you to set up ports and protocols, like which port do you want to allow access to the server. That can be set up in this EC2. Also, you can bootstrap script using EC2 user data. So if you want to have some softwares already installed, you can do that using creating a script in Linux, and it's not so complicated. I'll be teaching you that as well. So move on. What is user data? It is possible to bootstrap our instances using an EC2 user data. Bootstrapping means launching commands when the machine starts. So if, let's say, you want to install Git on it, and what you will do, you will create a server, and then you will go into the server and run the command for Git. But if you want to have it pre-configured while launching the instance, you can use bootstrapping, and you can create a command where it will say that you want to install a Git, and you want to create folders, you want to create files, something like that, and you can do that using EC2 user data. So user data is used to automate boot tasks such as installing updates, installing software, downloading common files from the internet, and anything that you can think of, anything that you can write in your scripts can be done using EC2 user data. And user data runs with the root user. So in Linux, you have root and other users, and it runs on the root user. Next, there are different instance types which we are going to see, but just to name few of them: T2 micro, T2 X large, C5, R5, and M5. So if you can see, there's difference between the memory and the CPU of all of them. So this has the lowest 1 and 1. This has 16 CPUs. This has 32 memory RAM. So you can choose any of them according to your use case. If you're having a simple block, you can go with T2 micro or T2 X large. But you have something like, are you hosting gaming servers, then you can go for C5 or R5, something like that. So depending on your use case, you can choose instance types. And let's go and do a hands-on. So I'm going to do the hands-on So I'm here in my AWS dashboard, and you can find EC2 here in the compute service. So in here you can see EC2, or else you can search for EC2 here in the search box. So I'm going to search EC2, and whenever launching servers, first thing you need to see is the region. So you want to choose in which region do you want to deploy your servers in. So you have different options like US East, US West, Africa, Asia Pacific, anything like that. So I'm going to choose the Mumbai region because that's the closest to me, and I'm going to launch my instance there. So to launch an instance, you need to click on the instances option here, and you get the option here, the orange button where you need to click on launch instance. And I'm going to type in the name of my instance, so my instance. And if you see here, it lets you choose the application and the OS image, also known as AMI or Amazon Machine Image. And you get a bunch of options like Amazon Linux, Ubuntu, Windows, Red Hat, SUSE, and Mac OS. A lot of AMIs. You can also choose marketplace AMI. So if you want to install WordPress, you have to first install Linux. You need to install WordPress. You need to set up MySQL and all the other stuff. But if you don't want to do that, you can just type in WordPress here. And in marketplace AMIs, you can get ready-made WordPress. You don't need to set it up. So you can choose Amazon Machine Image as a base for your EC2 servers. So we are going to choose the Amazon Linux one. This is the one that we are going to use. So I'm going to select this here. All right. And now I've selected the Amazon Linux image. The instance type is going to be T2 Micro. So this is free tier, so I'm going to use T2 Micro throughout the course. You can choose any one you want, but if you choose something else than T2 Micro, you will be getting charged. So I don't want you to get charged, so we are going to use the free tier eligible. Next, we have to choose the key pair. This key pair is used to SSH into our instance. So to SSH means, let me show you my terminal here. So this is I'm inside my local Linux machine. I'm inside my local Ubuntu machine. So if I want to run any command, I can go here and I can type ls, I can type cd, anything I want. So I'm inside my Ubuntu image, and if you want to be inside in your Linux image, you need a key pair. So you can either create a new key pair or you can use the existing one. So I already have the key pair, but to show you, I'm going to create a new key pair. So let's click on create a new key pair, and you can select the algorithm as rsa.pem file. If you're using Windows, you can go ahead and use the .ppk file. Windows does not work with .pem file. So let's give this key a name. So my key, and I'm going to create a new key pair and save it in my desktop folder. So save. I have my key downloaded here, and I'm going to go next. You can choose network settings, in which VPC do you want to launch this instance, in which subnet do you want to launch this instance, and a lot more stuff. You can also choose security groups. So security groups are like firewalls, which lets you choose which protocol or which port you want to allow. So let's add a rule. I'm going to add a rule name as HTTP. So where is HTTP? Here's HTTP. The protocol is TCP, port number is 80, and we have to choose the source type. So we can choose from anywhere, which means anyone on the internet can access our website or access our instance using HTTP. So let's go ahead and choose the storage. You can add more storage if you want, but I think 8 GB is sufficient. And let's go ahead and add user data. So for user data, you need to click on advanced details, and you need to scroll down. So here's the section where you need to add in the user data section. So this is user data. This is what the Linux script look like. So this is shebang, and you need to start with /shebang/bin/bash. So this is installing, updating all the packages, installing Apache web server, starting Apache web server, and enabling it. Now we have the message to put inside this directory, that is www.html index.html. So we want our instance to have all these things when it is running. So I'm going to use this user data, and I'm going to click on launch instance here. It is launching, and after some time you can see it has a message of successfully initiated launch of Amazon of instance. So I'm going to click here, and it will bring me to the dashboard. So here it is in pending state, but still you can see some things like you can see the instance ID, you can see the public IP associated to this instance, you can see private IP, the IPv6 address is still going to come, instance state is pending, the public IPv4 and all the other stuff. The instance type is T2 Micro, and we can scroll down where is this instance located in this VPC ID, in this subnet, all of the different stuff. And you can go here security, where you can see which security group is attached to it, what are the roles, what are the security groups. So it has port 22, that is SSH, and port 80 enabled from anywhere, right? And let's wait for it to come online, and it is still in initialing. You have to wait for status check to come, and status checks are these two checks: system status checks and instance status checks. So once you have launched your instance, you have options to either stop it, you have options to reboot it, you have options to terminate it as well. So if you don't want it anymore, you can go ahead and terminate it, but once you terminate, you can lose it completely. You cannot have the data again. But if you stop it, you can start it and have the same data that you have installed. So let's see if it is launched or not. It is still initializing. And you have also different options like actions. In actions, you can either view details, connect to this instance from SSH. You can do stuff like change instance type. If you don't want it from T2 micro, you can make it T2 large or C5 large. Anything that you want, you can change it here. You can edit user data, the script that you have put in, you can edit that as well. You can manage tags. And in networking section, you can attach network interface. So network interface gives you public IP or private IP, and you don't need to know about that for now. I'm going to teach you that in next session maybe. And in security group, you can attach security group, or you can also attach IAM role. So IAM role, if you have seen the video about IAM, if not, you can check out the IAM video. I'm going to link it here somewhere. And IAM roles are permissions granted to any service so that they can do some task for you. So let's see if we have it. So I'm going to copy this in new tab, and I should see the message of whatever was described in the user data. So let's wait and see if it is actually showing or not. So I have to remove this S here because I don't have SSL enabled. It is going to be HTTP only. So I'm going to, and as you can see, we can see the message that was described in the user data. So if you see the user data again, so this was the message, hello world from host name, and it was in the index.html page. So we can see that clearly on our screen, on our web page, which means our instance has correctly configured with the user data. So let's say you want to make some changes, and you have to do some changes. So if you're in Windows, you have to download a software named as Putty, or this is what Putty look like. This is a software. Or if you're in Linux like me, you can just open your terminal and you can put in the SSH command and put in the key with the IP address, and you can get into your instance and make any changes. Maybe you can download stuff. So or else you have a different option. So I'm going to select the instance, click on connect, and you have options like EC2 Instance Connect, Session Manager, SSH Client, or EC2 Serial Console. So if you don't want to download any third-party app, you can select EC2 Instance Connect and click on connect. But just remember that this is limited to only some of the instances, like only to Amazon Linux or Ubuntu. You cannot do it with Windows or any other instance. So I'm going to click on connect here, and I should be inside my Amazon instance. So here is the name of the instance, and I am inside my instance. So if I do some command like sudo apt update, sudo yum update, this is Amazon Linux and not Ubuntu. Sudo yum update, and it is updating the package. And if you want to delete install, let's say git, so sudo yum install git, and it's going to go ahead and install the git. So this is how you go into the server, download stuff. You can pretty much do anything that you want. If you want to have a WordPress website, you can install WordPress, you can configure MySQL, but this is how you launch an instance, right? So I've taught you everything about instance, how to launch one, how to get into the instance, how to download softwares, and there's something more I want to tell you about. So if you see here the IP address, just note down the IP address. It says 13.232.137.213, and we have it here. So if I stop this instance now, let me stop this instance. You can stop the instance by selecting it, instance state, and stop it. So I'm going to stop this instance, and it is successfully stopped. Let's refresh it. So it is stopping, it is in stopping state, and we will wait for it to completely stop. And just remember that this IP is now going to be changed, and I'll show you how. So it is still in stopping state. So now it has been completely stopped, and if you see, the public IP address has been gone, and the earlier one was 13.232.137.213. Now if I start the instance again, so I should have the same IP address because I have used it in my domain name. Let's say if you have set it up, if you have set up your website, you want the IP address to be same, right? If it is not same, your site will be down. So I want to have the same IP address, but that's not the case with the instance. If you stop it and start it again, the IP is going to be changed. So let's see it. It's still in pending state now, and we should see an IP address here. So the private one is going to be the same because it does not change the private one, but you can see that this one is changed now. So this is 13.253.153.164, and the earlier one was 13.232.137.213. And this is very big problem. If you have your website directed to this IP address, if it is changed, you cannot access this, right? So you need to have a static IP address, and that can be done using a service that is known as Elastic IP address in AWS. So you can have you can have static IP address so that your IP does not change even though your instance is started or stopped. So to have a static IP address, you can need to click on this Elastic IP option, click on allocate Elastic IPs, and you need to choose Amazon pool of IPv4 addresses and allocate. You can put tags you want, but it's totally optional. So I'm going to skip this and allocate IP address. So I can, as you can see, I have an IP address here. And the thing about Elastic IP address is, if you allocate it but do not use it, then you are going to be charged. But if you use it, then you are not going to be charged. So once it is allocated, you need to attach it to the instance. So I'm going to click on associate Elastic IP address here, and I'm going to select the instance that is running and click on associate. So now you should see that the instance IP should be changed to this, and I'm going to click on associate. Let's go back to our instance and select the instance to see that the IP has now been changed to a static IP. And even if I stop it or start it again, the IP is still going to be same. So let's show you again. So I'm going to stop this instance now and wait for it to be stopped completely. And after this, I should have the same IP because I'm using Elastic IPs now. So we talked about the launch. We have launched our first server using AWS console. We have got the first high level approach on what AWS parameters are, what is Amazon ID, you have got all the idea on and the details about that here. And we also saw how to create or launch a web server. So we created this one. This is our web server, Apache web server, with this message on the website. And we have learned how to start, stop and terminate our instance. So let's go ahead and see if the IP is changed or not. So I'm back here in my instance and it stopped completely. Let's start it again. So I'm going to start it here and I'm going to close all the unnecessary tabs. So closing this and this, and also closing this. So this is Putty is going to be a SSH software for Windows. And if you have any questions or any doubts on how to do this, you can let me know in the comment section, and maybe I'll create a new video on how to SSH with Putty in Windows. But you can always go and use the instance connect option, which is very easier without setting up any third-party application. So it's still in initializing phase, and you can see that the instance IP is still the same. It has not changed because we have used Elastic IP. So this is how you can have a static IP and you can have the same IP even though your instance is stopped. So now that we have learned everything about this, we can choose to terminate this instance, and it is very common for you to terminate instance in the cloud because you don't want to pay for you don't want to pay unnecessarily. So you can terminate instance whenever you want. So I'm going to select the instance, go to instance state and click on terminate instance. Once this is terminated, all the data will be gone. I cannot find it again. So if you want the data to be saved, you can click, you can create snapshots or you can create backups. But this is how we can launch an image, launch an instance. We can stop, terminate, attach an Elastic IP and all this stuff. So you have learned a lot. Let's go ahead and learn more. So we learned about instance type. For this we were using Instant T2 Micro, and let's understand the naming convention. So let's take an example of M5.2x large. By the way, you can see all the instance types here. You can go and see the extensive list of instance type here. It contains all the list, like from T2 to C family, A family, and then you also can see all the other stuff that you want. It is all present here. You can go ahead and check out. So let's take an example of my M5.2x large. In this, the M stands for the instance class, the 5 stands for the generation, so version or generation you can say, and 2x large is the size. So 2x large will define how much CPU or how much RAM is going to be there. So to give you more clarity, we can go here. So you can see 2x large here, and 2x large has more CPUs and more memory compared to x large. So x large has only 4, but 2x large has 8, whereas in memory it has 16 and 2x large has 32. So 2x large is the size within the instance class. Next is the instance type. We have different types of instance type depending on a use case. The general purpose instance type is the instance type which is great for diversity of workloads such as web servers or code repositories, and it has a complete balance between compute, networking and memory. So if you have a general use case where you don't need to have a lot of memory or CPU, you can go ahead and use the general purpose. And next is the compute optimized. So it is good for compute intensive workloads and that require high performance of processor, and the use cases are batch processing, media transcoding, high performance web servers, high performance computing, scientific modeling and machine learning, and dedicated gaming servers. So workloads that need a large amount of CPU can be created through compute optimized, and this is one of the most important or most asked question in the exam as well. So you need to know about the different instance type, the general purpose, compute optimized, and these are always going to be C5 family. So C family. Next is going to be memory optimized, so fast performance for workloads that process large data sets in memory. So whenever there is memory, it is going to be memory optimized. And use cases are high performance relational and non-relational databases, web scale cache storage, and in-memory databases, application performing real-time processing of big unstructured data. And R stands for RAM. So R, X and Z is going to be the memory optimized. No one is going to ask you this, but just remember why memory optimized is used, why compute optimized is used. So use memory only when you need memory, use compute when you need CPU tasks, use general when you don't have any such particular criteria, and lastly it's going to be storage optimized. So great for storage intensive tasks that require high sequential read and write access to large data sets on local storage. And the use cases are high frequency online transaction processing system, OLTP, and relational and NoSQL databases, cache, data warehousing and distributed. So I family is going to be storage optimized. So these were the 4 different instance type: compute, general purpose, memory and storage optimized. And let's talk about security group. So we already saw what security groups are, like firewalls for the instance, which allows certain port and protocol. So let's do an hands-on for this. I'm going to launch the same instance again, so I don't think I can do that. I'm going to launch a new instance again, and let's make it my server. I'm going to do this fast because I already taught you how to launch an instance. So Amazon Linux image, it is going to be T2 micro. Key pair is going to be the one that I've created, which is my key, and networking I'm going to leave it as it is. For security group, I have the port SSH here, and I don't have any other port. I'm not going to add any other port because I want to show you something. So let's go ahead and put the user data for this, and the user data is going to be the same as the previous one. I'm going to launch the instance. So it is launching, and I should see this instance in my dashboard within some time. So let's talk about security group here. Security groups are acting as a firewall on EC2 instance, and they regulate access to the port, authorized IP address and IPv6. So you can choose on which source do you want this traffic to be allowed. So you can choose to have everyone to allow traffic on port 80, or you can have only your IP. So this /32 means only one IP, which is your IP. And custom TCP rule, you can add any custom rule. So if you're using any application that has certain port number, you can add as well. So here's the Java application which runs on port 4567, and you can add that as well in your security group. And let me just show you if I think it should be up now. It's not. So let's wait, and you can change the security groups rule here. From here you need to select the security group, and it will open a security group dashboard. You can go ahead, and I need to make this move somewhere. So I can click on edit inbound rules here, and let me drop this for now. So I am going to click on add rule. I can choose anything that I want. I can choose any rules I want. So any custom TCP or HTTP or SSH, anything that I want, and I can make changes. Like if I want only SSH from my instance, I can choose here which has my instance and it is /32, which means only one instance. So let's keep it as it is for now, and let's see if our instance is up or not. It is not up. So let's talk about so security group are like, if you have allowed access to that port, you can go into instance. If not, it is going to deny. So if you can see, we have authorized SSH for port 22 for this, but not for this, so it is not going to enter. And same way for outbound as well. If you have allowed, you can do it. So good to know about security group is that it can be attached to multiple instances. You can attach a single security group to multiple instances, and security group are bounded to region or VPC. You can have security group only within the region or within the VPC, and it lives outside the EC2. If the traffic is blocked, the EC2 instance won't see it. So EC2 does not know about the security group, but you can still attach rules on security group for EC2. And if your application is not accessible, if you get an error that is timeout, then it is security group issue. But if your application says connection refused, it is the application issue and not the security group issue. So whenever you get timeout option or error, you should go and check out the security group first, and then you can check the application or another. You can troubleshoot any other issues. So all traffic is blocked by default, and all outbound traffic is authorized by default. So let's just try out this. Alright, so our instance is up with status 2x2 checks, and I'm going to open this address, and I should see, like I see here, I should see the web page because I've used the instance state user data. I'm going to remove this S here because it's not SSL, but still it's loading, and it is going to show an error after some time. And the reason for this is because we have not enabled the security group. We have not enabled the port 80, which is used for HTTP. So we are doing HTTP here, but we have not enabled HTTP. So we need to do that. But first, let's see if we get an error or not. So after 30 seconds, it will stop, and it will show that the error, connection timeout error. And let me troubleshoot this. Why you can see my face. So I'm going to do this. All right. So I'm stuck here. I don't know why, but it's okay, I guess. It says device is busy. I'm going to not show my face, so forget that, and let's see here. So it is still loading, and now if I go here and change the security group rules, I'm going to go in the security group section, and I am going to add a rule. Let's add a rule, and it is going to be HTTP. So HTTP here, port 80 from anywhere. So now I have this rule, and I'm going to save this. So once I have saved, I can come back here and stop this and refresh it now, and I can see the instance. I can see the data that is there in the user data. So if you have allowed the port, you can see it. If you're not, you cannot see it. So that's how security group work. You can choose which rule do you want. If I remove the security group now for HTTP security group rule now and try it again, so you can see that I'm going to get the same error, that is it is loading. So it will keep on rotating, and it will, after some time, it will show an error, but it will not have the same value, right? So that's how security group work. You can choose which port do you want, which port do you not want. And let's go ahead. These are some of the well-known ports that you should know. The port 22 that is used for SSH, port 21 for file transfer protocol that upload files into the file share, port 22 that is also used for file transfer but secure file transfer that uses SSH, and port 80 that we just saw, HTTP. And if you can see here, you get an error that says connection timeout. So you need to know about this ports: 8443 for HTTPS and 3389 to remote access your Windows instance. So we used EC2 Instance Connect to get into our instance, and if you are using Windows, you can use PuTTY. If you are using Linux Macs, you can use SSH command as well. But it's good to use the Instance Connect because you don't need to download any other software, and I use that a lot. Next is going to be how to SSH into your instance. So we already saw how to connect. You need to go to the instance here. So I'm going to go to the instances. I'm going to select my running instance. I'm going to click on connect, I'm going to click on connect option here, and I am inside my instance. So I can run anything I want. I can run sudo yum update command so that everything is updated. So this is how you get into our instance and do anything you want. So that's what is written here, how to SSH into your instance on Linux or Macs. And with you can also use EC2 Instance Connect to connect to your instance within your browser. No need to use your key. So as you can see, I have not used any key because it is already loaded in the Amazon. And the magic is that the temporary key is uploaded on the EC2 onto EC2 by AWS. So the key is already there in the instance, and it works only out of the box with Amazon Linux too, but it also works with Ubuntu and not with other instances. So you need to make sure you are using Amazon Linux too or the Ubuntu image. And also you need to make sure that the port 22 is still opened. If you don't have port 22 open in your security group, you will get the same error like this, connection timeout, and you cannot access it. You cannot go into your instance. So let's try to attach a role on EC2 instance. So, but before that, let me show you something cool. So we can launch instance or do anything with the console. So this is the AWS management console where you can do anything that you want. You can launch instance, you can use S3, you can use IAM, you can use RDS, anything that you want by just clicking on it. And there's another option to access your AWS services, that is using CLI. So this is my command line interface, and I can do anything I want in my account from here. So for that I need to do AWS configure, and I need to put in my keys and access keys. So this is something like username and password, but for CLI. This is command line interface, and this is graphical user interface or GUI. So using CLI I can see anything I want. So let's try to list the IAM users, and I'm going to list IAM users here. So I should see all the users that are there in my IAM account, and I can see that there's a username as Alex, demo user, and a Nasi. So this is done because I have AWS configured. And there's another way to get the same data. You can choose to add AWS configure here in your EC2 as well, but that's very wrong to keep your access or secret access key on the instance, because that can be a security threat. Someone else can access your EC2 and get your access and secret access key. So rather than that, we can use IAM role, and IAM role are permissions granted to service if you want them to do some task. So you can attach an IAM role to AWS instance. Let's attach an IAM role. So if you don't know about IAM role, not a problem. You can watch my previous video on IAM, which has hands-on as well as theory. So let's try to attach an IAM role here, and I'm going to select the instance. I'm going to click on actions, and I'm going to click on security, modify IAM role, and I'm going to attach the role that is going to be new EC2 role. And let me show you what this role does. So to show you, I'm going to go to the IAM option. Let's search for IAM, and I'm into my, this is my IAM dashboard. I'm going to go into roles, and I'll see what does that role does. So let's search for that role, new EC2 role. This is the role. And if you don't know how to read permissions, please go and check out the previous video. So this was the permission, and it says that you can allow list and get user on anything. So same as what we saw in the console, in the CLI, you have the permissions to list user, but you don't need to do AWS configure. You don't need to store your keys in that. You can do it using this role. So I'm going to attach that onto my EC2 instance, and before attaching it, let me show you that I cannot see the users. So let me just run this command and show you that I cannot access it. So it says unable to load credentials, and you can configure credentials by running AWS configure. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to attach the role. So let's attach it and save it. So it says successfully attached new EC2 role to instance. So this is how you attach an IAM role to your instance. Now I should have the permissions that was defined in the IAM role, this permissions to list and get users. So let's run the command again, and hopefully I should see it. So I'm running the command, and I can see my users, all of them, same as what I can see in my instance, and I can see it here without running the AWS configure command, just by using the role. So this is how you can attach IAM role to your instance, and we have done this hands-on, and I want you to do the hands-on yourself as well, because if you don't do it, you are not going to learn anything. So I would recommend you to watch this video first and then do the hands-on while watching this video twice. And you have let's talk about the EC2 launch types, and I already have created a video on this, so you can check it out. There's a detailed video. I'm going to link it here somewhere in the top, so you can check that video. But just to give a brief introduction, so you have purchasing options wherein you can select how do you want to purchase EC2 instance. You can have on demand, you can have reserved, you can have savings plan, so spot instances, dedicated hosts, dedicated instances. So let's learn one by one. So on demand means you can choose to launch or terminate instance anytime you want. So no long-term commitment, you can choose whenever you want, and you pay for what you use. For Windows or Linux you use per second, and for other operating system you pay per hour. And there's no long-term commitment, and recommended for short-term and uninterrupted workload. So next is going to be a reserved instances, which gives you 70% discount compared to on demand. But the thing is, you need to have it for either 1 year or for 3 years. And the payment options are no upfront, partial, and all upfront. So you can watch this video and you'll get more idea about it when you see that video. You can check that in the description box as well. Next is the saving plans, same as reserved instances. So and the spot instances, which can be used for temporary workloads, and these are the most cost efficient. So this is the key term that is used in the AWS exam for spot instance question, most cost efficient, and it can give you discount up to 90%. Next is going to be dedicated host. So you get the physical server yourself, where you can have your instance only. No other customer can have the instance on that host, and it is used for compliance requirement and to use your server. To use your existing server bound license. So anytime you see licensing or compliance requirement in the question, it is going to be dedicated host. Dedicated instance, same as dedicated host, but few restrictions. You can check that this is the restriction. I also have created a video to compare dedicated host and dedicated instance. You can check that out. And this is the example I have described in the previous video. This is the pricing comparison for all the different launch types. For on demand it is .10, and for spot instance this is this. You can pause the video and check out this price comparison. So let's summarize this section and let's bring this video to an end. So EC2 instance, using AWS EC2 you can launch servers, and you can choose which OS do you want. Do you want Linux, do you want Mac, or do you want Windows? You can choose which instance size do you want, how much CPU do you want, how much RAM do you want. You can choose how much storage do you want. You can choose what rules do you want. Do you want to have HTTP, do you want to have HTTPS? You can do that using security groups, and you can also bootstrap your instance using EC2 user data. So security groups are like firewall attached to the instance, which tells you what rules are allowed and what are not. EC2 user data are like a bootstrap script, which will help you to launch script launched at first start of an instance. Using this we launched our web server, Apache web server, and we have seen it on the web browser. And SSH is used to go into your instance to launch, to install some packages, or to do any changes. You can create directories, you can create files, anything that you want, you can do it when you get into instance using SSH. Just note that you have to enable this rule. Then EC2 instance role, you can do certain tasks by providing permissions using IAM roles, and we have seen how to list IAM users using attaching IAM role. Lastly, purchasing option that we have seen right now, and this brings to the end of the EC2 lecture. So I hope you have learned a lot about EC2 in this video. If you have any questions, any doubts, you can post that in the comment section. And if you want me to cover any other video, you can let me know in the comment section. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can find the LinkedIn link in the description box. And I hope you learned a lot about EC2. So please subscribe to this channel if you have not, and please like this video. I will see you in the next lecture. Maybe we can cover more topics on S3, on RDS, on load balancers and auto scaling group. Just let me know in the comment section and we can do that. So have a good day and happy cloud computing.